Reverse engineering time. This is an ESP32P4 with an associated Wi-Fi Bluetooth provided by the ESP32C6. It's a module by a company called Guition. It has, of course, on the top here an interface to the antenna for the Wi-Fi Bluetooth. A bunch of castellated pins on the side to connect this into a module, and a metal cap which provides EMI protection. If you take the metal cap off, you can see the part that we'll probably study in the greatest detail today, the ESP32P4. This is a 360 megahertz RISC-V core with an associated low power core. That sort of puts it between a Raspberry Pi Pico and a Raspberry Pi Zero in terms of compute power. Now, Espressif probably made their name initially by producing chips which had Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. The P4 die is completely occupied with digital and lower speed analog, so it's quite common to see this thing mated together with an ESP32C6, which has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Down here we have a Nor Flash SPI PRAM from a company called Boya. We're seeing Boya a lot now with the domestic Chinese-produced products. Two crystals, both 40 megahertz, one for each of the Espressif parts, and just a simple voltage regulator here. Now, this actually is not just one part, it's two. There's the actual P4 die, and then on top of it is a pseudostatic SRAM. We'll take a look at that as well. So, without further ado, let's de-encapsulate the P4 and take a look at the silicon die. This is the so-called top metal. You really can't tell much because the power distribution is sort of hiding most of the bits below. The bits that are peeking out basically are things that don't tolerate having digital power running across them, so up here and up there. However, if you take the metal away, this story becomes fairly clear. If you're wondering what this big blob in the middle here, copper color, that's actually some metal that the acid didn't dissolve. Down here, this is the MIPI interface. This provides an interface to a camera and to a LCD display panel. You can see it takes a fair bit of the die actually, so it's quite an expensive function. You have the USB 2.0 PHY sitting down here. All along the top of the die, I just trace around with my cursor, going this way. And then over here are the GPIOs. They're actually quite flexible in this chip. They can be rerouted all over the place and carry a multitude of signals. In the middle is the digital logic here. The processor core runs so slow at 360 megahertz, it won't be a hard macro. It'll just be rendered as gates. The product has 768 kilobytes of level 2 cache. I suspect there's 512 sitting up here, and then 256 sitting down here. Providing that level 2 cache memory. The main program memory is on a pseudostatic RAM that's glued on top of the chip. We'll take a look at that in a minute. On the upper left, a lot of analog functions. There is a crystal oscillator, takes a 40 megahertz crystal and generates a clock signal from it. There's also a touch sensor, temperature sensor, a couple of ADC controllers. I think they're probably there. Sitting on the upper left. Down the bottom here, this looks like a large FET structure. They do speak about an on-die voltage regulator, and I have my suspicion that that is related to there. Otherwise, a very typical modern era, fully contained, fairly decent processor section sitting on this bit of silicon. If we go to the C4 die, this is the one that provides the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Of course, we can see the RF section sitting here with all of its classic inductors. I suspect that's the Balun, that's probably the VCO, and then these will be the mixers here for the RX and TX. You strip the metal away, you see a lot of common design clues. For example, up here we see that there is that same voltage regulator, sort of reusing of technology. You can see, of course, more SRAM sitting here. You can see ROM sitting here, and same thing, the processor is very slow in a C4, so it disappears into the... This is the pseudo-static RAM. It's basically a DRAM internally, but it's a static interface, so it looks like an SRAM, which simplifies, of course, the interface to an external device. Same thing, this is always the top metal, not too interesting, and here is the metal stripped away. Now, I must say, I was fully expecting, of course, on the edges here, there's a bunch of logic, which, of course, does all the handling of the signals, and there's the interface going out to the side. But when you zoom in, at least so far as I've etched it, I'm seeing these little metal squares. And I'm not entirely sure what I'm looking at, to be honest. I'm not sure if there's something below them yet again, but with the resolution of an optical microscope, I'm not sure if that is the polysilicon or there's something sitting below. Bit of a mystery. Here's the die mark. It's a company called AP Memory. That looks like an E7 or perhaps an E1. Last chip on the board, of course, we've seen this before. This is the SPI Nor Flash from Boya. Seeing a lot of Boya these days. Here we can see it, the BY25Q128. I didn't strip the metal in this one, but if I did, we'd see below it the charging circuit here to create the higher voltage for the flash cells. And of course, you can clearly see how SPI Nor Flash is always arranged in banks. So this is a personally satisfying picture for me. I've been struggling trying to de-encapsulate oscillators that are in these crystal packages. I finally cracked how to do it. It's a metal can. I basically lapped it off with a 600 grit sandpaper and water, wet dry sandpaper, just to the point where the lid was starting to fatigue here on the edges. And then I got some double-sided tape and I just put it on top of the package and get a good yank. And it pulled away the metal. And of course, undamaged, we can now see the crystal. There's two connections on a crystal. There's two pieces of quartz here. If you go around here with your eye, you can see sort of an indistinct but yet transparent devices, because that's what they are, the transparent quartz. They deposit metal on paddles on one side, then this metal on this one is on actually the other side. And of course, as the quartz deforms, it either gets induced a voltage or it induces a voltage out of it, of course. And the crystal's just sitting on top of these two posts, so it's adhered here, but it actually allows to flex in time there. So anyways, that is a crystal in a modern SMT package, and I must say I'm very pleased now that I figured out how to get these out without damaging them. So the board uses a black solder mask. I think Apple really kicked this off. I'm not quite sure why green was disposed of, because black makes it so much harder to reverse engineer. I took all the parts off though, and then I again sanded down the solder mask with some fine sandpaper. Things of note, the ESP32 uses ground pads on the base of the chip for thermal management and also power delivery. It makes it somewhat hard to solder, unfortunately, but is certainly a very classic technique. You can see the routing for the Wi-Fi antenna comes from the ESP-C4, comes here, pops across a component, and you can see that there's actually population options. So if you want to use the connector that goes off here, which is the U.F connector, you can use that. It looks like they routed also to the castellated pins, so you have an option there. And otherwise, this looks like a circuit board. It's actually a very special version of a circuit board called a substrate. It's slightly more brittle than normal circuit boards, but allows actually some very fine details to be established on it. And then the backside here is the same sort of thing, some VS. So one of my viewers constantly asks me about the size of the silicon dies in my Teardown. I thought I'd just review those and then do a costing exercise. It's typically done to sort down if a vendor is actually charging a reasonable price for the silicon. There's four major chunks of silicon. I didn't tear down the voltage regulator. The most important one, of course, is the ESP32P4 seen here, coming in around 16 square millimeters. The next one is the pseudostatic RAM, coming around 4.5 square millimeters. The ESP32C4, which is the Bluetooth Wi-Fi chip, coming around 7.3 square millimeters, and the SPI chip coming around 6.4 square millimeters. Now, the process nodes for these two chips from Espressif are 40 nanometers, because that's what the website says. So it's fairly easy to do a costing and yield model. For example, if we take the P4, which is known to be 40 nanometers, almost certainly to be on a 12-inch wafer, because their majority of their silicon on fabs 14, 15, 18, and 12 is 40 nanometers. Lots of calculators online, any silicons what I'm using here. It says that basically you would yield out about 4,000 die on a 12-inch wafer. And then, believe it or not, actually you can actually ask Microsoft Copilot to do a costing, and it did a fairly good job here. TSMC's wafer prices are negotiated per vendor, so they're of course a secret, but I see a lot of reference between $3,000 and $5,000 for a final wafer from TSMC. If you have about a 95% yield, that means the part cost is around 80 cents to $1.10. If you pick the midpoint there of about $1, that would be the cost of the silicon. And then of course you have to package it. Packaging is almost equal to the cost of silicon, or sometimes a bit more. If we assume it's about the same, we would have a finished good price to Espressif of around $2. And they would want to sell that part on with probably at least a 40% markup to a distributor or manufacturer. So they would like to get around $2 to $2.80 to $3 for their part. And then we can sort of back confirm that by going to a distributor like LCSC, and you can see that they want at modest quantities around $4 for the part. So that all sort of hangs together in terms of a costing model. So if you ever want to backwork the cost of silicon, it's relatively easy to do so. If you want to take a longer look at some of these die microphotographs, I have a copy on electronupdate.blogspot.com. I know some people prefer video formats for these, and some people prefer being able to look at things in detail. I would certainly appreciate a thumbs up on this video, and I will see you on the next one.